In this video, we'll be testing the Kelty Late Start 2-person tent for its ease of setup, spaciousness, rain protection, comfort, and more. I bought this tent from Amazon, and here's the unboxing. Out of the box, this is what I got. The tent body, the rainfly with 4 pre-attached guidelines, a pole bag, a stake bag, and the bigger overall carry bag. Inside the bags, you'll get 2 poles, 10 stakes, a pole repair splint, and the setup instructions. Briefly, here's roughly how to set up the Kelty. It's pretty easy to do. It comes with 2 pre-bent poles, which are to crisscross over each other in an X pattern, and they're supposed to be secured in the quick corner fabric sleeves, so no grommets here like other tents. Then secure the 9 pole clips around the tent. These clip the body onto the poles, and there are also no pole sleeves here. After that, drape the rainfly over the poles. One of the buckles is color-coded blue, while the rest are orange, so you'd easily know the correct configuration, and the rainfly secures easily with these easy clip buckles. Then stake the entire tent down and guy out the pre-attached guidelines. Altogether, the entire setup takes just slightly more than 5 minutes. Taking down the Kelty is just the opposite of the setup. It took slightly longer though, about 6 minutes to pack the whole thing away. For more details, I have a separate video with loads of instructions and tips to help you set up your tent more easily. The peak height in this 2-person Kelty is about 41.5 inches. My height is only about 5'3", so even with a 4-inch thick sleeping pad in the tent, there was still plenty of headroom left for me. And here's me inflating a 6-inch thick queen mattress. I still had quite a lot of headroom left above me when I was sitting on it. The peak height is only at the center though. The walls slope downwards for the rest of the tent, for not just the length of the tent, but also the width. For the base area, here's me measuring the length of the Kelty 2, which comes in at about 87.5 inches. Now for the width, it tapers at one end, and here are some measurements in case you need them. The middle comes in at about 48 inches, the width at the head is 52.5 inches, and the width at the foot is 44 inches. Overall, that's a total base area of about 29.3 square feet. Now, what is the pad sizing like? Well, here's my X-Bed Megamet Duo 10 inside the Kelty, which is the size of 2 regular pads put together. It fit quite nicely with quite a bit of leftover space for storing gear on the floor. Now, what about the queen bed? Sadly, because the width is a little bit too short, when I tried inflating an almost queen mattress in the tent, I couldn't get it to fully inflate. On top of that, it very obviously bulges out the front of the tent, and it's not a good fit for this tent at all. The Kelty Late Start comes with just 1 vestibule at the front of the tent, and the width of this vestibule is 25.5 inches. That gives us an extra base area of about 7.7 square feet. Not the biggest I've seen, but pretty decent. The other end of the tent doesn't have a vestibule, it's just the ground vent covered with a layer of mesh, and here's what it looks like from the outside as well. To set up the vestibule, just use the attached orange webbing to stake it down. Only one side of the vestibule has this webbing, so that allows only the right side to be opened and closed. You can keep it open using this toggle by the side. If you don't need the vestibule at all, you can unstake it completely and tie the whole thing up, because both sides, not just the right side, have 1 toggle each. Under the vestibule, you'll find the single door of the tent. The door is pretty big, coming in at 41 by 32 inches, which makes getting in and out of the tent pretty easy. To keep the door open, there's a toggle by the side to hold the door fabric out of the way. This door has 2 zippers. There are no-name zippers, but even so, I found that the zipping experience was pretty good. There are usually no snags for me at all. Same with the vestibule, the zipping experience is good, no snags at all. For storage, there are 2 pockets at this end of the tent. The other end doesn't have any pockets, but there is 1 more pocket here up top. Each of the bottom pockets measures about 9 inches across by 7 inches from top to bottom, and the top pocket measures about 13 by 7 inches. Overall, all these pockets are a decent size. There's a loop at the peak height of the tent, which I usually use to hang a lantern, and around this top loop we have another 4 loops that you can hang a bunch of other stuff to. Now, how is the seam taping in the Kelty? For the inside of the tent, there's this seam running across the floor, which is fully taped. Duh. I also noticed that all the corner seams were taped up really well. The vertical seam running up from the corner is also taped up to a certain point, and the rest of the seams you see on the screen here and everything else around the tent, not taped. As for the rainfly, all the seams were perfectly taped as well. Moving on to rainfly protection, it's a full coverage rainfly extending almost all the way down to the ground for max rain protection, with only a small gap at the bottom for some ventilation. What I didn't like about this rainfly though is that it cannot be pulled away at the widths of the tent, only the lengths. 2 reasons. First, there's less ventilation when you don't pull it away because the rainfly is right up close to the tent body. And second, during the heavy rain, the water will be right up close to the tent body, which is not good when there's a lot of rain. Now, here's a look at what the tub floor in the Kelty looks like. The tub goes up to about 10.5 inches for the width of the tent and about 7 inches for the length of the tent. They are different lengths because the front vestibule and the back floor vent pulls the rainfly away from the tent body. So the tub floor doesn't need to be too high because there's more rain protection there. Unfortunately, the rainfly cannot be pulled away at the widths like what I mentioned before. So there's less rain protection, more rain will splash up against the tent body, so the tub floor at the widths need to be higher. Also, the corners where the rainfly is up close to the tent body, they're actually better protected with this extra fabric here. Now that you've seen all the waterproofing features, let's find out how it does in all types of rain. After the heavy rain stopped, I checked in on the tent, and here are the results. After 1 hour of light rain, 1 hour of moderate rain, and 1 hour of heavy rain, there was not a single drop of water inside the tent at all. I checked the corners, no leaks. I checked the other seams, no leaks. But when I checked the rainfly, I noticed that it was slightly damp. Even so, thankfully, there were no drips into the tent and the mesh up top was still completely dry. Also, I noticed that the water didn't go beyond the tub floor, so it's the perfect length for keeping the water out in heavy rain. The Kelty Late Start comes with 4 main guidelines for wind protection, and I really liked that it also came with these little guideline pockets that you can stuff the guidelines into for an easier pack away or when you need to take off the rainfly. I highly recommend doing so on hot days, and here's what it'll look like. This is majority mesh, I would say at least 3/4 to 80% mesh, because anything above the top floors is just complete mesh. So this is like a pure 3-season summer tent. It'll be a bit difficult to use this outside of summer, and when you lie down in the tent, you can stargaze or look at views. This mesh is perfect for that. As for materials, the floor is made of 68D polyester, and so is the rest of the tub that extends up the walls of the tent. The rainfly is also made of 68D polyester. The poles are made of aluminum, and the mesh is micro mesh, the holes of which were able to keep out every single bug for me. The guy lines are a regular shock cord with an easy-to-use tensioner, and the stakes are like your regular thin shepherd hook stakes. For portability, this 2-person Kelty Late Start has a pack size of 18 by 8 and a bit by 7 inches. If you're packing the poles separate from the rest of the tent body, the pack length is about 14 inches. You can pick up the tent using this hand grip here, and the whole pack tent weighs almost 5 pounds, which is a little bit more than the marketed specs of 4 pounds and 8 ounces. You can also change out some parts of the tent if you want to, and I'll leave a breakdown of all the components on the screen. For pros, I really liked how affordable this tent is, especially at the price that I paid during Amazon's Black Friday sale. That's why I consider this to be like a budget tent. And unlike other budget brands like Coleman, which give only a 1-year warranty, Kelty's tents and gear come with a limited lifetime warranty. I also really liked that the entire tent took only about 5 minutes to set up. It's faster than most other 2-person tents I have, basically because this is more of like a functional, no-frills tent. There weren't like a lot of vestibules or a lot of poles for me to set up. And because I typically camp in summer, this is the perfect budget tent for me with loads of mesh on all 4 sides of the tent. That plus I love that the mesh is almost transparent and not like a weird color like some other tents that I have. This makes it great for looking out and admiring the views. The overall quality is good, no loose threads, perfect seam taping and threading, and you get all sorts of little details like the difference in tub flooring and also guy line pockets. Not something you see in a lot of budget tents around. But here's where we get into the cons. While the waterproofing is better than budget tents like Coleman, it's not as good as more premium brands like REI and the North Face. Here's the breakdown. Premium tents like REI and the North Face can last at least 12 hours of consecutive heavy rain, no problem. Coleman's budget tents can do like 30 minutes to an hour max before the first leak comes into the tent. Kelty is a little bit better than that. It took 1 to 1.5 hours of heavy rain before the rainfly got a little bit damp. I think it'll do 2 to 3 hours of heavy rain before leaking, so it's somewhere in the middle of budget and premium. Coleman's waterproof ratings range from 500 to 1,000 millimeters, while Kelty's is 1,200, so a little bit better as well. My recommendation is that without extra waterproofing, Kelty is great for occasional heavy rain and not persistent downpours. Another con is that there are no extra vents in the rainfly or the tent body, which really limits ventilation on rainy days. Another reason why it's not the best for loads of heavy rain. And moving away from rain, another con is that this tent has only 1 door and 1 vestibule. Most 2-person tents I have come with 2 doors and 2 vestibules. And if you're expecting a ton of livable space, this tent doesn't have that either. Quite a few of my 2-person tents have this like ridge pole at the top, which helps to pick the tent body up and give you loads of space inside the tent. But the Kelty has only a very simple like 2-pole structure, no ridge pole, so you don't get as much headroom inside. I know Kelty came out with like the pre-bent poles to help increase livable space inside the tent, but I don't know, man, I didn't really feel like there was a big difference there. So overall, if you're looking for a tent that's not only inexpensive but performs well, this tent is great. It's much better than your typical Coleman or Core tent. But of course, don't expect a ton of features like what you get in higher-end brands, as I mentioned in the cons. This is just a solid, no-frills, perfectly functional tent. I got what I paid for and more, and I highly recommend it if that's the budget you have. I know this because I tested the Kelty Late Start against other similar tents. Check out this video on the screen to see how it went. I'll put it up when it's ready. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in that one.